Today we're talking about the SAP new solution called Financial Compliance Management. We planned roughly an hour, but obviously we will have end of the presentation a Q&A session for which we probably need some 20 minutes or 15 minutes of time. Any questions you have, please post them on a Q&A part. And you can do that all the time. Today's speaker, so it's me. My name is Petri Valenius. I'm giving here the European accent on the call. Background quite large on the last 15-20 years on compliance side, and as a special guest, Neil Patrick from SAP. Maybe Neil, you would like to introduce yourself.
Thanks, Petri. Yes, welcome to everyone. As Petri said, Neil Patrick. I work in our solution management team at SAP. Been in the GRC space for about, 16, 17 years, at SAP for about just over 8 years. I'm solution manager for FCM, as we call it, and I'm really looking forward to the session.
Very good, thank you. So what are we actually discussing today? Yeah, so the SAP Financial Compliance is of course a new tool, a new platform. So our information stands on what are the functions of the FCM, how mature it is already, how can it help you, how can it help us, especially on controlling on the S/4HANAs. Are there different kind of contents available, or do I have to build everything myself? Can I do it? How and with which systems it does integrate, and how can I actually start with the implementation? So those are roughly the areas where we are going to go today. We will be talking with both persons in here, so I hope you can follow it. And let's start from the FCM overview. So we're trying to give you a bit of an update on what for the system is, what it can do, and I think it would be the best, Neil, if you start and explain from the side of SAP of what FCM does. Yeah.
Thanks, Petri. Okay, so FCM Financial Compliance Management. It is our next generation internal controls solution for the intelligent enterprise. And if you look at the ribbon across the top, what the solution takes you through is the ability to contextualize and centralize documentation of your internal controls. It has a very neat detection and investigation component. And then also now what's growing is a really powerful ability to remediate with various tasks, so you can actually then close out any issues that are raised. So what we see this gives you is, first of all, to have a rich documentation of your controls, and you relate them to organization, process, regulation, the risk, the control owner, and so on. So you've got the strong context of the control. But because it's a cloud solution, it's really intuitive to use. So the interface is simple to use and easy to use, which means that you get your end users engaged. And that's really cool. So anyone of those on the audience who know about GRC solutions, if you don't have users entering up-to-date data in the software, the content inside there becomes out of date, and then the solution becomes useless. So having this easy-to-use interface is really, really important. We've also tried to make the software as easy to use as possible. So in terms of configuring manual procedures, which is a core part of the software, but also being able to automate where possible controls, procedures as we call them, that's really important for the software. So you can improve business performance, overall performance. And then because it's a public cloud solution, and because it's quick to set up, your cost of ownership, the barrier to entry, and your overall cost of compliance, if you like, is really low. But it goes further. Because of the automation, you actually then push yourself into the ability of having almost semi-real-time control monitoring. So you get a lot of benefits from that. And then finally, look at the issue remediation part and having these detailed tasks and templates. You can document the remediation of the risk that you're exposed to, whether it's from a process risk or a control risk or something like that. So it's a really nice end-to-end solution for the intelligent enterprise. And we tried to also make it as broad and as powerful as possible. So if you look at the modern business, everyone talks about resilience. And that comes from, I think, having something like a GRC solution, and internal controls are really important for this. It gives you a stake in the ground for what are your processes, what are your high-risk processes. And if you run controls or analysis across those processes, if there are any vulnerabilities or any fraudulent activity or anything that's illegal, anything that's out of policy, or anything that's slowing the business down, that really helps you move quickly. And because it creates alerts, and you can drive this concept of operational resilience. And the nature of the rules that come with the software, they cover at least these three levels. So you've got the transaction level controls. So look at key business steps, maybe looking at duplicate invoices, maybe, or raising transactions in a period where the period should be closed. Or maybe if you look at policy and process controls. So for example, you might have a segregation of duties policy. So you can check whether the same user has, let's say, raised or approved the invoice. And you can see, has that actually happened? So real occurrences of SOD violations. Or maybe master data control. So has somebody changed some of the settings on one of the suppliers, or flipped somebody from a one-time vendor to a multi-time vendor? Or is the master data around the bank details of a supplier missing? So it can actually cover all of those areas of business operations as well. Next slide, please, Fergie. So what's our vision? So we have a very bold vision with the software, and you see it goes from risk in the left to controls and reporting remediation in the middle, and reporting to the right. And we've actually delivered on pretty much all of this. And when we get into one of the future slides, we'll talk about risk a little bit more. But we've got, so if you look at the center of the software, for the moment, it talks about the control, okay? And as we build out around that, we've got as I said, the related elements of regulation, and you've got policies in there, so you can look at the ethos, the culture. We also have the process hierarchy, or multiple process hierarchies that you can link to the control. We have multiple organizational hierarchies, so you can see which entities are important for the control. And we've got the concept of the work package, which schedules the control, raises issues, which are then remediated in this remediation plan, which is quite detailed, as I mentioned. And then we've got the business end of the control, I suppose. We've got the manual procedure, which is what you'd consider as a manual control, or the automated procedure, which runs automatically on the target backend. In this case, we look at S/4HANA. So you can, as much as possible, automate the controls. And then we get this part, which is quite exciting from our perspective, that during this year, towards the end of this year, and probably Q4, we're going to add the risk ability. So you'll be able to do a risk assessment in the software and link that to the control. So you will then have a cloud-based risk and control solution with issue and remediation. And there's one last little bit, which hopefully I think just push once more, Petri, which we've built into the software. One more click, Petri, please. There we go. The integration to Signavio. So Signavio Process Manager. So we can synchronize process and control description in both solutions, which is really interesting for the business, for second line, third line, and external audit.
And yeah, maybe from a perspective how we have seen it, and for the clients also important to understand the listeners. So if we look up and the business flow, and you see different kind of, let's call them as a master data. So we have regulations, we have process hierarchies, we have organizational hierarchies, and I think it's important to understand that what SAP has done is that these are multi levels. So we can have like end-to-end relationships, we can have one-to-end relationships, we can have organizations especially defined in the levels what we want. We can sort of release them to the users on a time when we want, so we can do a bit of a planning on the master data maintenance and then say, okay, it will be released now, it will be unused. So from a business flow point of view, it's been already implemented as a quite thorough design. Yeah. Anyhow, so let's look a bit about the maturity, because this is at least what we hear often, and say like, okay, it's a new tool, how good it is. You know, some of the people, of course, have a long history of SAP and softwares, and yeah, maybe have some concerns. Do I need to wait for certain service packs to come in before I can use it, and how does it work? So let's just maybe start and say, so financial compliance management works together with the S/4HANA. That's why they both names on top. And the financial compliance management, we showed it as FCM, is a true cloud-based solution. So you can't have it as on-premise. It's just on a cloud. Yeah, and the maturity at this moment is that you can do all the major financial compliance processes for S4 systems in it. Yeah. What does it mean? We can go later through some of the processes, but you know, you can have like shown by Neil, you have your process change from organizations to the processes to the regulations. Regulations can be your internal controls. It doesn't have to be external. Depends. You can name it. You can link it how you want to the control effectiveness, to the remediation. So it is already on a very high level in the process side. Yeah. There are also always updates coming in, releases, and there are coming new features all the time because it's in the cloud. Yeah. So it means that continuous improvement. Yeah. It is also important to understand that it is, of course, designed to work with S/4HANA. That means to have full use of it, you would need S/4HANA systems. In the integration part, we talk also on what other systems you could integrate and when. Yeah. If we look at the maturity from process perspective, yeah. So on last, I think it was on February, there came some additions to the issue management. We have now, like Neil just introduced, the Signavia integration. We have also enhancements on manual and automated procedures. So we can say that there are all the time, we see all the time new updates coming in. There are coming enhancements to the system. And it looks for us that at this moment and how we see it, it's already very much usable for typical finance-related process chain on internal controls or in a compliance environment. From a content, so SAP standard content, it is created on S/4HANA, yeah, and there will be always some new releases, now some new updates to that, but that comes on the SAP side. SAP has also enhanced, and we discussed that later on, a method how you as a client can, buy or have content on your system, and they have released the sub store for content building. So there will be more content. Content is in this meaning the automatic or manual procedures or the remediation paths, etc. So in a summary, we're still in the early stages of full integrated stack of cloud GRC solutions. Yeah, but we see that they are coming all the time more parts. Like Neil already said, the risk service is coming hopefully very soon. We hope that like GRC assets will be also some point integrated, or watch list creating, etc. So these are microservices. This seems to become inside or will be interconnected to the process of FCM. And when they will be coming out, I think maybe there will be some questions on this side. And maybe Neil can answer those a bit later on. Now, as a consulting company, we do get questions quite often. Okay, there's a process control and there's FCM. Can you compare them? No, we can't compare them. So that's why we say maturity against SAP process control, because these are two different kind of solutions. Yeah. They do both controls, yeah. They both work on the internal control framework, but they are still different, yeah. So if we look on application types, so we have here off-the-shelf cloud system. It's off the shelf, yeah. So you buy it, you have it. Obviously, there are some integrations to be done, but you buy it, you have it. It's in there. So there are no technicalities when you build up the system or the automatic procedures in the data selections. There are no restrictions. Interface is only on a theory. On the focus, we focus in process control, performance, and automation for improved business delivery, yeah, as well as second line control, evaluation, and testing. There are content, we will talk more in detail, financial content inside, which are especially meant to answer different kind of compliance, financial compliance questions, yeah. Integration, so it's a integration platform for digitalization and transformation, rise and move. It requires for monitoring S4 HANA on-prem or cloud. Now, ask yourself on which other systems, if you happen to be on cloud version, can actually analyze your processes and directly read something. FCM can do that one. And yeah, it has out-of-box content, what you can consume. Now, of course, on a personalization, it's a cloud. So it means you can't do it 100% to meet your requirements if your requirements are very much outside of a standard process chain. But over my experience of past tens of years, those processes are quite much in organizations similar to each other. Maybe someone needs a bit higher level of approvals in certain processes, but in a general, we move quite in the standard method in here. But you need to bear in your mind that it's still a cloud solution. I can't fully customize it to the level maybe what you have been used to in the past, especially if you're a long-term SAP user already. Now let's look what it means in a content with a S4HANA. Maybe Neil, you can explain a bit the architecture from a point of view of the SAP.
Yeah, thanks, Petri. So on the right-hand side is FCM, and as we're saying, it's a true multi-tenant cloud solution that runs on SAP Business Technology Platform, and it's worth spending just a few seconds on that because that's SAP's strategic business platform, but also its development platform. So there's a lot of functionality that's being developed under BTP that solutions like FCM can make use of and reuse of. So from a development trajectory, it's not just the solution that we're developing, but also we can tap into what comes out of BTP and pull it into FCM to extend it. So maybe in the future, if we, for example, SAP builds some or adds in some AI capabilities, that becomes available to us as a user of that technology. And then because it's on BTP, that means that as a customer, you don't need to have any SAP infrastructure. You just subscribe to the software, spin up an instance, and there it's pretty much ready for you. So from then looking to the left-hand side, the S4HANA story, the software is really quick to set up and run. We have the work package, which schedules a control, which then has a number of one or more automated procedures, which then are scheduled to run, and then the business logic deals with the consequence of those. And how that works is FCM will then connect to the S4HANA backend via an OData service connector, which is an open source connector. So it's not proprietary to SAP. I think it's originally a Microsoft connector. And it connects to CDS views, so core data services views that persist in the back end. So that means a number of things. First of all, there is no need to copy the S4HANA data anywhere. It stays there. It also means the CDS views have the visibility of whatever they can see in the HANA database. So you can build deep and broad queries into the back end. And then also because you have the processing power of HANA, which is a very powerful beast, it runs exceptionally quickly. Of course, anything that runs on a production system, you would have to performance tune. Like any report that you build, you would need to check that. But the ones that we've got that we provide and any partners who do, they run sub-second. So you can actually query quite a lot with the software. And it's all processed on the back end, and then just the results of the query, because they're parameterized queries. So in the business logic, you define, okay, I'm going to run this particular query. I'll look for values that are above a certain materiality threshold. I'll limit it to a particular ledger or a particular company code. Just the results are pulled back up into FCM, and then they're used in processing the logic. So it's a really neat partnership between a cloud solution like FCM. And if you look at S4 public cloud and S4 private cloud, there are a bunch of rules from us that are shipped with S4. So it's pretty much ready to run. It takes a few minutes to connect them to the off-the-shelf CDS views and then a little bit of time to configure them, not long. So it's really quick to get up and running. And of course, SAP would say SAP knows SAP best, but we do have an understanding. So any updates to S4, the queries then are maintained by SAP, the ones that we provide. And we know how to get to the back end to get the data out of S4 to pull into a system like FCM for processing. I think any other thoughts from your side, maybe Petri, but I'm done with that one.
Yeah, I think the majority for the client perspective, what this means is that since we're on a cloud side, so we try not to have on FCM side too much of machine power running. So the most important what you will have if you go into the automatic procedures or automated procedures is that you rely on the data, what you are created, or your queries, what you created on your backend system. Now there are multiple ways of connecting several systems to it, but what we have seen, the CDS technology has been already long in there, of course, in S4 side, so you could have already used it on other purposes than on compliance. But what we have seen is that it just gives us even more power to analyze data, and hence what we see that and the data can be used for other purposes as well. So for us, of saying that it's only for S4 HANA, I think it's absolutely fantastic because most of the companies are going to the S4 HANA. You still have an part which is the ECC system. So if you happen to have an ECC system and you're not yet sure when you go into the cloud, yes, FCM can work also in there, but there are some limitations to it. Yeah, but I just would like to say maybe a word in here. Life is not all about automated controls, and FCM is not all about automated controls. It's also about manual. It's also about the transformation and digitalization of the Excel sheets, which we do see quite often, which is quite normal in the names of controls, financial controls, internal controls. So hence, from an architecture point of view, important for us is to understand BTP, integrations through that, and S4. Now, maybe it's worthwhile of looking a bit of a content, yeah, and there is a lot of content already in the systems, yeah, and there are more to come, yeah, and there are a few ideas which came from SAP side, and Neil, it would be nice if you build a bit of insights to the processes what we already have in there. But maybe before you start, I just explain the FCM itself and the S4 HANA systems together. If you buy a latest version, has around 70 automated procedures which are running in there. Now, don't get lost in a quantity, because the quality is more important. So it means that some of those you don't need for yourself, but it's all meant to cover the most important processes. Neil, please.
Thanks, Petri. And you're right. I mean, this is something that we wanted to try and achieve with the offering, really, to make it easier and safer, I think, as customers move from other ERPs or ECC onto S4, looking at some of the core processes, the financial processes, that if you plug in something like FCM, you know you have the confidence that there is something looking out for you on those processes. So here we're looking at record to report, but we've also got controls that look at, for example, procure to pay. So here we've got the four sub-processes: record, post, close, report, and we've thrown across those some of the controls that ship with the software to indicate their relevance to the record to report process. And as we mentioned early on, part of this really is to improve the business performance So you could consider these almost operating as first-line control, so running in process during business operations to speed up that end-to-end process, to stop having waste of time, let's say when you close a period end, to reduce the amount of time it takes to do it, because you've hit all of the questions already, because something like FCM has run and highlighted those controls before you hit your period end close. So we really want to speed up the performance of the business, but also, as I say, hit those questions early so you can remediate them quickly. And that then gives you a faster running business. And that's the example for record to report. But as I say, it would also be in order to cash or procure to pay or some of the other core processes. And we see this as a really good step up or a help to get you operating quickly and smoothly and easily. And then, of course, you do also have the ability in FCM to add on your second line of defense ability. So testing the effectiveness of a control, and then remediating any issues that might come out of that. So you have the ability to check that the controls are running, it's the right control, and it's doing the right job. Back to you, Petri.
Yeah, and like we said, so there are a lot of controls already from out of box or procedures, let's call them like this. So the controls should and are normally coming from the client side. Of course, those procedures are related to that. But I think the main perspective is that what it supports for you as possible clients or users, or maybe some of you are already using the system, it helps you to set certain baseline, yeah, and gives you, of course, further ideas, and largely it just speeds up implementation. Yeah, so you can quite fast understand how the logics are working, what is already in the system. You can start using, and as we do say in the compliance, go step by step to your goal. So and that's where I have to say it's first time really good to see that there are a lot of good content in there. Are there more to become? I believe so. But the quantity is not always the one where we need to just look. We just need to look at the processes and understand a bit further of them. What can I use? Now, maybe just let's look. Can I implement my own content? Yeah, that's a bit of a two-folded question. Yeah, yes, you can build your own content, but it depends, of course. Are you on a S/4HANA on-premise? Are you on a cloud, or which versions you generally are? If you have your own S/4HANA on-prem and you would like to create content in there, oh yes, please, you can do it. So you basically create the CDS views like explained on your backend system is your S/4HANA, and you link them in the FCM tenant. Well, you can buy also from Substore the packages, what different kind of companies are offering and more or less will offer. Or you can use third-party compliance specialists like us on creating them. So these are the same examples, same methods, what you pretty much have had in the past on the other SAP compliance tools. If you are then on a public cloud, it's maybe a bit different, or in a cloud session. So you would normally buy the content. So there's a Substore where you can buy the packages. It's a bit more complicated with the building in, yeah. So there's another slide coming in, but it's quite technical. So I'm not going to spend too much on the time in there. But there is also for those who have newly bought the cloud versions, there is also a possibility to build the content by themselves. But like I said, the main idea is that you know, you buy it through the store. And in case, of course, if you're good enough, you will build it through or by using the so-called steampunk for new HANA customers. Now, for whom it is available or not, you would need to validate with your SAP contact persons, yeah, because it's quite a new method what has been released. But I think this is a good evidence of showing that SAP has again found a good speed for developing a modern GRC tool. So there's all the time coming in new additions, enhancements to the processes, and we are nowhere of end of development of even larger scale of the system. So those were how we could, or how you could implement content to your FCM system. Yeah. Now let's talk about a bit on the integrations. Yeah. So largely the companies do not just have one system, or do want to control something more than a one system, or have such large scales of information that they need to link it with other cases. So what can we at the moment integrate? Yeah, so this is still on a high level. Surely there will be more methods on technically to integrate, but these are the methods what we have so far seen and used and know are functioning. So of course on the ERP side, we have the on-prem and cloud, as well as ECC. On those, the CDS content view, of course, always depends on your version. We have newly the process integration from Signavio. So those who don't know the Signavio, it's a process, a business process management tool, which is integrated on SAP. It's a SAP tool. What we can do in FCM side, our financial compliance management, is that we can either read and define the controls which are created in Signavio, and as well the business processes. So it means if your controls are already defined in Signavio, you don't have to really do them twice. So you can say, okay, let's link it through this system. Yeah. Other way around, if you're just starting life with a Signavio and you would like to have some of the controls from the FCM side, you can also send to the Signavio. So there's a or a two-side connection existing. Then the case management, which is basically the issue management. We have a possibility to integrate, for example, with SAP BIS. Yeah. So some of the organizations utilize heavily, especially large companies, a BIS for their detections, earlier called fraud management. So there's also an integration point where we can read the detections or the results of the detections and manage them through the issue management and remediation cycle to have on FCM the full compliance cycle. Yeah. You can also use and integrate other systems, also non-SAP systems, through the case management. But there are some communication requirements which needs to be met. But I think the main message here is for you to say that, yes, you can link. You just need to know where you would like to link them normally and how SAP sees it's on the issue management side. And yes, you can integrate in their data from other systems. Reporting, important to know. So the FCM has its reporting. It's quite operational itself. So how many controls are open, etc., that kind of what processes, how many processes are existing for which controls. But the dashboarding is done and will be done in SAC. SAP has already defined a standard dashboarding in there. It looks visually quite nice. It's working. I know there are some initiatives to even further enhance them. But like I said, if you have an SAC and you have an FCM, you can manage the dashboarding through it. So on the implementation, this is the, let's say, for many people, especially on the SAP side, the big question. Okay, what are we talking in here? Extremely difficult to say. Yeah, how do you start your journey? I think there are quite many methods how you can start. I have learned over the years that it depends quite much of, are you a large company? Are you a mid-sized company? Are you just looking for certain departments which should be using? So we know some of the clients have been using FCM just for finance purpose, or finance department for their month-end closings. What is your scope? Is there a particular scope? Are you trying to digitalize your Excel sheets or your ICS framework itself? what is your IT architecture? So are you having several systems where you are linking? Are you having very large scale? So depending on how do you answer to those questions, there are multiple starting points. Okay. I think if you have a limited scope and you just say, okay, I would like to understand a bit more based on the automated controls, what is my status? Yes, you can start out of there. Yeah. But if you're really going for building up and digitalizing your ICS or your financial frameworks, then maybe it's a good point to start looking on the organization processes itself. Yeah. I think the most important, at least that's my lesson, what I've been seeing as a consultant, and I had quite many years on the other side on the industry, is that you need to understand how the FCM works. It helps you a lot. It gives you a good confidence of knowing how do you build your controls, your organizations. If you don't know how the FCM works and how the compliance is normally built on a digitalized platform, it might become a bit cumbersome work and a bit too lengthy. So I think my main message for you is try to understand, how FCM works. And there are a lot of materials for it available on the internet. You can, of course, go to SAP Store. You can look out of there how to start the financial compliance management. There is from us in the Turnkey starter kit. I think it's the first one and so far the only one which is for FCM. What we try to do is to basically take every of you a client up and say, look, this is what you have in them. This is how you can go on about it. This is what each of these controls are doing. Let's take some of the controls and set them live. Yeah. So it's basically to speed you up. You can see the pricing, you can see the details. If you're interested on the SAP Store, you can of course always contact us. But the main message is there is no one single method how to start it. Yes, we can help you on how to start it, and please visit the SAP Store to find more details or come back to us on this case. There are also some useful resources. So if you just look the SAP FCM setup guide or admin guide, so either going by SAP Help or Google it. You can also same time find on Help SAP all the controls. If you need any help, please be so kind, just contact us. There are lots of videos. You can look we have from Turnkey some of the brochures which you can look and also SAP Store for further information. What we, in a final wording from my side, what we are trying to do is to evidence you that there's a good case for FCM. It works and it is a very reliable tool. Now let's pause in here and let's go to the questions and answers. So there are a few questions. One is, if we already have on-premise GRC, but without process control, does it make sense from licensing perspective to move to FCM? I think, Neil, that should be answered by you.
Yeah, so I typed an answer to Johanna, but it's also good for, I think, for everyone, because it's probably a common question. So it does depend on how much you've invested in process controls to start with. So how much investment is there in the business? How many users are using it? Because obviously then if the business change going from solution A to solution B could be significant. But it does depend on the time investment, and how much does PC tie into, let's say, your corporate reporting for internal controls. So it's the source system then going up to your reporting systems. So that's one question. So if PC is well used and heavily embedded, and if it's working, it's great. The old saying is if it's not broken, don't fix it. Another question to ask maybe is how mature is your compliance requirement? So if you're a large multinational, maybe registered on the SEC, and your CFO has to do, or your CFOs have to do annual attestations and sign off, and you're using PC to do that, then I'd say stay with PC, because at the moment in this year, FCM hasn't got, for example, an attestation component. There is a workaround for that, but it's not maybe as easy as you do it in PC. There's also often a resistance. It's less so these days about putting sensitive things like compliance requirements on the cloud. So if you're okay with cloud software, then it's not a barrier, sure. Because I think the experience, the user experience of using a cloud solution is really, really nice. And from a maintenance perspective, it's really good as well. So looking at that, look at the annual cost of maintenance of PC compared to FCM, you'd be running infrastructure. You don't need to do that anymore. So yeah, FCM I think is really good. So it depends. More than happy, approach myself or Petri if you want to discuss that further. More than happy to do that.
Maybe just an interesting question. I don't know, Neil, if you can answer on that. From a licensing perspective, are the licensing schemes similar, or are they working on the cloud differently? Not asking about the values, but is that absolutely different scheme for people to understand?
Actually, and that's a good point, Petri, because I should have mentioned that as well. Yes, the pricing in FCM is different to PC. So first of all, FCM is on a tiered structure, more of a tiered structure. And your entry point is 10 users, and there's 5 tiers. So every time you go into the next tier, it goes from 1 to 20, 21 to 50, I think it is. The unit price of the license is cut down, and the unit price per user is significantly less than for PC.
Okay, thank you. Then there's other questions. Do you think there are any opportunities for a data science team focused on finance controls and anomalies in FCM? And if so, how they can assist?
Yeah, so this is really interesting as well. And as I find this quite exciting. So if you look at the concept of the intelligent enterprise, if you want to bring intelligence to the enterprise, and if there is a body of finance data and there are data scientists looking at that, and there's a tool that can then raise alerts and put some governance around it once found, well, that's a really interesting set of ingredients to make a nice cake out of. So yeah, for sure. Big challenges for all organizations is to see what's coming around the corner. What's next? What are my new risks? Or what are my bubbling under risks that are there, but I haven't quite seen yet? They haven't surfaced to them. So data science can really lift out from a massive data to say, well, these things are emerging. And if you plug that intelligence, that output into a tool like FCM as an input, as a rule, for example, or as a manual procedure, then you really have something helpful to the business. And I think that's really cool. And then forward-looking, if you're doing scenario planning, for example, data scientists might be asked to work up a couple of examples of scenarios. You could then help to understand what are the gaps in the control structure or the risk structure, and what would be the cost to backfill those, and then which would be the least expensive options to go down the road. So I think there's a huge opportunity there.
Okay, then there is another question. Is it part of the SAP GRC suite or separate license required for FCM?
Yeah, so the GRC suite, so if you're looking at the current offering, if you look at 3 lines model for PCE, that's a bundle, a license. So FCM is separate to that, but FCM is part of the SAP GRC suite. It fits into the enterprise risk and compliance theme. We've got these 4 themes or 4 pillars. So it sits alongside process management, process control, risk management, audit, and BIS. But it's a separate license.
And
that's a good one. That's a good one for you.
So how long and indicative timelines will it take to implement FCM? Okay. I think any consultant hates to answer such a kind of things indicative. Okay, it seriously, we have it's out of box. Okay, so the traditional method that we are sitting for months of implementing something is unfortunately a bit gone in here. So I would say if the technicalities have been solved, within a week or two, you're up and running. Of course, setting up the correct master data depends on the complexity of your processes, setting up the correct remediation method, setting up the more APs, not the standard one, takes a bit more time. But the technicalities itself, that the FCM is up and running, it's connected, it's taking that one system, yeah, you should be good within a week or two's time. So it's fast. Yeah, so don't take me as an absolute number, and especially audience in the US. This is a Finn who is talking in here. So these are the experience numbers what we have seen, but it's seriously, it's a fast to implement. So it's a cloud system. Okay, then is there? Sorry, there's coming more. If there's an existing SAP GRC process control in place, communication and synchronization can be done between FCM and SAP PCM through issue management. Yes, so you could do it. Think about it where it makes sense on the process itself. Does it make sense? But you could do it.
So, Johanna, probably the best if you either reach out to myself or Petri. I'm a bit torn here because I love process control. I think it's a fabulous solution. As I said, I've been at SAP for 8 years. I know PC quite well. However, I'm the solution manager for FCM. So depending on the other questions, how big is your organization, what level of requirements do you need, I would say have a chat to us, because I think that's a good opportunity for FCM.
Okay, then we have another one. Any additional products, e.g. Signavio, needs to be procured to bring the best out of implementing FCM? I would like to answer that. Now, you don't even need Signavio. If you have it, it gives you a good advantage maybe to use it. So we have had clients who have process control and Signavio, and they do look in a compliance cycle, the data, but their compliance is saying that no, our process is a bit different. We name it differently. We have different controls. So it's not needed in them. It might be an advantage for those, yeah, but it doesn't have to be. Good. Then one more. If integrating to GRC currently, is this already IAG consistent too? Once GRC is discontinued with FCM, have to run independently. Okay.
So maybe James, if I start with you, and because there's a question I need to ask you, but I'll start with some basics. So FCM, because it's a BTP app, it uses IIS and IPS, the Identity Authentication and Identity Provisioning Service. That's part of BTP. That links the FCM users to your identity store in your corporate system. So IAG isn't necessary for that. So when GRC is discontinued, I assume that you might mean IAG or access control. FCM is independent already, so it's not required for that. I don't know if that answers your question, James, or Petri, if you've got a different perspective, or maybe James, you might want to follow up.
Yeah, probably if you come directly to us, so it's I'm not exactly sure what is meant by the question, to be honest. So then there is another interesting one: is what is the future roadmap? Yes.
So we have a very ambitious roadmap for FCM, actually, and Petri, as you said at the start, it's probably worthwhile just elaborating on this a bit as well. Because FCM is a true public cloud solution, the minute a feature has been coded, tested, it can be released into the system. So you're not waiting for an annual upgrade, let's say, or every 6 months an upgrade. As soon as it's ready and tested and works, it's available. And we have released a lot of good things since FCM came out, and continues to grow, and we want to continue it to grow. So if we're looking for this year and heading into next year, and these are concepts, I suppose, as much as anything else. So you can't really quote me on any of this. As you know, with the SAP, there should be a disclaimer that we reserve the right to change any of this. But one thing that is absolutely key, which we've touched on already, is to introduce the concept of risk into this offering, so that you can do a risk assessment and link it to the controls. And SAP, we all know that's really important to do that. So I think that's definitely going to happen. It's just, you know, no matter when and how long it's going to take. We do also want to add more content packages, maybe around different areas. Everyone's talking about ESG at the moment. We talk about FCM. It's called Financial Compliance Management, but it's a generic internal controls engine. So maybe one of our partners might want to do an ESG type package. SAP might want to focus on a particular regulation. So, and this isn't something we have right now, but for example, UK SOX, something like that might be really interesting. So more packages, but you know, our partner community can do that as well. And that's really the strategy with FCM as well. And you mentioned this, Petri, that through the GRC Content Hub, partners can build these content packs for FCM, which as a FCM subscriber, you can go to SAP Store and it can be downloaded to your instance. So, you know, partners can build strong, maybe country-specific or industry-specific packages, which are then accessible. And we've spoken quite a bit about automated procedures with FCM, you know, which is nice, which is really good. We do want to help improve things, speed things up, automate, do 100% testing, go further, deeper. But bear in mind, most organizations, if you're lucky, you might be automating, I don't know, 30, 40% of your controls, the rest are all manual. So we also are heavily invested in increasing the breadth and the strength of the manual parts of FCM. So we've got this concept of assurance types in the software, roughly aligned to the 3 lines model. And we're going to extend the manual procedure types that exist in FCM to be, I suppose, to bring us even stronger to parity with process control, to build up some of the more second and third line components. We're looking at dashboarding. For those of you who've been in the GRC space, you know that GRC tools from anywhere, and I've worked for at least 3 of our competitors, and the reporting is always the most difficult thing to achieve of a GRC system. So we're looking at how we can improve that sort of analytical dashboards, and maybe some other interesting integrations. So that's I think on the cards at the moment. I can't talk about what they are yet.
That's quite much in the roadmap, to be honest. So good to hear. Just one more question came up. Does FCM provide some standards, rule sets for risks, controls, etc.? Well, not like a rule set. So SAP has provided the automatic procedures. Yeah, so those 70 what we discussed. So those you can use. You can contact us. You can look the SAP Store if you want to understand more how they function, what they function. You can look also on SAP Help. There is freely information on that. But as in a financial controls, of course, we can follow different kind of regulations, try to build them after. But the learned results are that quite many organizations have their own, especially procedures. The controls might have, or control objectives might be a bit of the same, but the control names are already different. Some of the companies identified slightly a different method. Are you in a SOX doing the COSO method in US? Are you in Europe? Are you doing a UK version? Maybe you just do an IFRS. So to answer shortly, there's a lot of content already available. But it's not a rule set like in access control where you say, okay, you take 200 rules and you good on them. No, it's not like that. They are meant to help you. They're meant to give you a good, satisfying value of your system, of your processes. If you have those processes under use, they need a bit of a filtering on the inside of them, but they are ready to take off. Okay. I think it's a good time in here to basically end our webinar. I would especially like to thank you, Neil, for joining, for giving valuable input to the audience, of course, all the audience side. So So we will try to give you more input further in line of the year, but it has been a very nice event. Thank you, Neil.
Thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate it.
Yeah. And like there's a recording in a place, you will receive it. If you need further information, you can contact me in a name. You can contact the links on info@turnkeyconsulting.com. You can contact Neil Patrick. We're all in there trying to assist you to get comfortable with the FCM and happy to assist where needed. Thank you very much.